The champagne glass stopped an inch from Tamsin Hewitt's face. Genevieve Holst's arm was still raised. Her fingers were still wrapped around the crystal stem. The liquid sloshed against the rim, trembling, catching the light from the chandeliers overhead. It did not fall, because Galen Thrace's hand was around her wrist. Nobody had seen him come in. That was the thing about Galen. He moved through a room the way a storm moved through a city. Not loud, not dramatic. Just suddenly, undeniably present, and by the time anyone noticed, the air had already changed. The dining room of the Meridian Club went silent in stages. The nearest table first, then the next, rippling outward until even the string quartet at the far end let the last note dissolve rather than continue playing into a room that had completely forgotten music existed. 200 guests, city council members, federal judges, corporate heads whose names appeared above the fold in the Wall Street Journal. Every one of them stared. At Galen's hand around Genevieve's wrist. At the woman standing 3 feet away, holding very still. Tamsin Hewitt was 29 years old. She had the kind of face that was easy to overlook in a crowd. Soft features, quiet eyes, the particular self-containment of someone who had spent years perfecting invisibility. Her black blazer was a size too large, which she'd intended when she bought it. Her hair was pinned up with the functional efficiency of someone who didn't have time to think about her hair. She was not the kind of woman people expected to find at a charity dinner in the private dining room of one of Manhattan's most exclusive members' clubs. She was the woman who kept the club's books. Both sets. Genevieve Holst, on the other hand, was exactly the kind of woman people expected. She wore $40,000 in jewelry and a dress that had been made specifically for her body. She had appeared on the covers of 4 magazines this year alone. She was engaged to be married to the man currently holding her wrist. She had not yet turned around. "Let go of me." Her voice was perfectly controlled, the practiced calm of a woman who believed she was always the most powerful person in any room. "Put the glass down." Galen's voice was quieter than hers. It always was. That was what made it worse. Genevieve turned. For one moment, her face showed nothing. Then the smile she'd been wearing for the past 3 hours. The gracious hostess smile, the philanthropist smile, the almost Mrs. Thrace smile, disappeared so completely that several guests later swore they'd imagined it had ever been there. She set the glass on the nearest table. Galen released her wrist. He stepped around her without another word and looked at Tamsin. The mark on Tamsin's cheekbone was already beginning to show. Earlier in the evening, before the glass, before this, Genevieve had struck her. Open palm, a clean arc. Tamsin had not moved. She'd stood with her hands at her sides and absorbed it. The way she seemed to absorb everything. Quietly, without visible reaction, already deciding how to minimize the aftermath for everyone around her. Galen looked at the mark for a long moment. Then he shrugged off his jacket. Black wool, no label on the outside because men like him didn't need labels, and placed it around Tamsin's shoulders. She startled slightly. Not at the weight of it, at the gesture. No one in this room had moved toward her all evening. Several people had looked away. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm fine." "I know you are." A pause. "You're still shaking." He turned to face the dining room. His expression hadn't changed since he walked in. It was the same expression he wore in boardrooms and back rooms and courthouses where men sweated through their shirts waiting for his decision. Neutral, precise, absolute. "Who," he said, "was present when this began?" "No one," answered immediately. The silence stretched past comfortable and into the territory where people started to feel personally responsible for things they hadn't done. A city councilman cleared his throat. A woman in pearls suddenly found her dessert plate fascinating. 3 separate people shifted their weight toward the exits without moving their feet. Genevieve recovered first. She always did. It was one of the things Galen had admired about her before tonight. "Darling," she said, the word landing with carefully calibrated intimacy. "It was nothing serious. There was an incident with the wine service. I handled it." "You handled it." "The staff was careless." She gestured toward Tamsin with the particular dismissiveness of someone indicating furniture. "She allowed a guest's dress to be ruined in front of our donors." Galen looked at her steadily. "Our donors." Something in Genevieve's composure flickered. Before she could respond, a voice came from near the kitchen door. "Mr. Thrace." It was Dex, 19 years old, the youngest of the floor servers. His white jacket slightly damp from an earlier incident that had nothing to do with carelessness, and everything to do with an uneven floorboard that had been on the maintenance list for 3 weeks. His hands were shaking worse than Tamsin's. "It wasn't her fault. None of it was. I dropped the bottle. I was carrying it wrong, and I slipped on the east side runner, and it went toward the table." He stopped, swallowed. The Andreo couple were sitting right there. Mr. Andreo has a pacemaker. If cold wine had hit him at his age, the shock. Another stop. Tamsin stepped in front of him. She caught most of the bottle with her hands. The rest went on Miss Holst's hem. His voice had gone very small. "Tamsin told everyone she'd bumped into me. She said it was her fault. She took all of it." The room held its breath. Galen looked at Tamsin. She was looking at the floor, not in shame. In the particular way, she looked at things she was calculating, measuring, sorting, figuring out what came next and how to manage it with the least damage. "You covered for him," Galen said. "Mr. Andreo wasn't hurt," she said quietly. "Dex would have lost his job. I have more job security than he does." "That," Genevieve said sharply, "is an absurd." "I wasn't speaking to you." Galen's voice didn't rise. He didn't look at her. That was somehow worse than if he'd shouted. "Dex, thank you. Go back to the kitchen." The young man almost ran. Galen looked around the room one final time, slowly, meeting eyes, moving from face to face with the unhurried patience of someone who had all evening and all the leverage. And then he looked at Tamsin. "Have someone look at your face. It's fine. Tamsin." She heard the difference in how he said her name. She went. The evening continued. That was the strange thing. It simply continued. The quartet resumed. Wine was poured. The charity auction raised $400,000 for pediatric care. Genevieve smiled and accepted congratulations, and moved through the room like nothing had interrupted the night at all. Galen watched her from the upper mezzanine. He had a gift for patience that most people mistook for coldness. The truth was simpler. He had learned very young that the right moment to act was rarely the first available one. Patience was just strategy with a longer runway. He found Sedgwick near the bar. His operations director had been with him for 16 years. A quiet man in his mid-50s, whose most remarkable quality was the ability to be in any room without anyone being able to describe him afterward. "Tell me about her," Galen said. Sedgwick didn't ask who, which part. All of it. Tamsin Hewitt, 29, graduated summa from Columbia, forensic accounting. She was at Fenton Graves for 3 years. You'll remember the Delco pension fraud case, 2021. She was the one who found it. Federal testimony, the whole thing. Galen was quiet. He remembered the case. After the trial, Sedgwick continued, Fenton Graves let her go. Off the record, she was unhireable. Nobody in legitimate finance wanted to touch someone who'd put a partner-level executive in federal prison. She spent 8 months applying and not hearing back. A pause. We offered her the bookkeeping position 14 months ago. She took it. Because nobody else would hire her. Yes. Galen looked across the dining room to where Tamsin had reappeared, quietly restocking a service station. The club's physician had looked at her face and done what she'd allowed, which was minimal. She'd been back at work inside 20 minutes. "What else?" he said. Sedgwick opened his phone. In 14 months, she's flagged 3 separate irregularities in the accounts. Small ones, the kind that are easy to miss and usually go unreported, because reporting them creates questions. She reported them. She didn't report them, she corrected them. Quietly, routed the adjustments through our reconciliation system in a way that closed the gap without triggering an audit trail back to the staff who'd made the errors. Sedgwick scrolled. 2 were honest mistakes by junior accounting staff. 1 was deliberate. One of the barbacks was skimming the liquor receipts. She corrected the record, flagged the inventory system to catch any future discrepancy, and said nothing. Galen said nothing for a moment. "The barback still works here." "Yes." The string quartet moved into something slow and without edges. Candlelight caught the crystal on every table. The room was beautiful, in the way rooms were beautiful when someone invisible had made sure every detail was exactly right. Galen watched Tamsin set a row of wine glasses in perfect alignment without looking at what she was doing. Her hands moved with complete automatic confidence, like someone whose muscle memory had been built through genuine repetition. "One more thing," Sedgwick said. 8 months ago, the secondary kitchen fire, the one we kept off the incident reports. At 2 in the morning. She was still in the building, finishing quarterly projections. Sedgwick locked his phone. 3 of the late dishwashers were caught in the smoke. None of them spoke enough English to understand what was happening with the alarm system. Security footage shows Tamsin going back in twice after she'd already gotten out. He paused. "She has a small scar on her left forearm. I assumed you'd noticed." Galen had noticed. He hadn't asked. He went to find the security office. The footage told the story the way footage always did, without narration, without sentiment, without the small adjustments people made to memory when they retold things. The camera didn't know what it was recording. It simply recorded. Galen watched Tamsin move in front of the Andreo table. He watched the bottle arc. He watched her catch it with both hands, absorb the impact against her midsection, redirect the spill toward the floor. He watched Paul Andreo, 74 years old, heart condition, seated 3 feet away, remain entirely dry and entirely unaware of how close the evening had come to ending badly. He watched Genevieve notice what happened. He watched her look at her hem. He watched her pick up the champagne glass. He watched her hit Tamsin across the face. He watched Tamsin stand there and take it. The security director beside him hadn't moved since the footage started. "Compile everything," Galen said. "The incident footage, the directional audio from the dining room for the past 2 hours." He stood, 20 minutes. Genevieve was in the middle of a story about a gallery opening in Basel when Galen appeared at the edge of the group. She recognized his expression immediately. She had seen it twice before, once at a negotiation that didn't go the way the other party had expected, and once at a dinner where a guest had made a comment about the Thrace family history. Neither memory was comfortable. She excused herself from the group with a practiced smile. "We should talk privately," she said, moving toward him. "We'll talk here." The guests nearby went very still. Galen nodded to the technician who had quietly set up the club's presentation screen near the bar. The wall panel came to life. The footage played. No narration, no dramatic introduction, just truth, unedited, in sequence. Tamsin stepping forward, the bottle, the catch, the wine hitting Genevieve's hem instead of an elderly man's chest. Then the audio. Genevieve's voice, measured and deliberate, moving through a small group of guests from earlier in the evening. She cultivates sympathy. Women like that always do. Give them an inch of attention, and they build a narrative around it. A soft laugh. I wouldn't trust her numbers, personally. There are things about how she operates that don't add up. The dining room was absolutely silent. Genevieve's expression did something complicated. "That," she said carefully, "is taken out of context." "I have 47 minutes of audio," Galen said. "We can continue." Her jaw tightened. "You're making a scene over a staff member." "I'm establishing what happened in my establishment tonight to a woman who works for me." He paused. "With my name on the door. You're choosing her." The practiced evenness in her voice finally cracked, and what came through was real, for the first time all evening. Raw, disbelieving, furious. "You're standing in front of everyone we know, and choosing a bookkeeper. Look at her, Galen. She's nobody. She came from nothing. She'll always be nothing. And you're humiliating me over." "She caught a wine bottle with her bare hands to protect an elderly man's heart," Galen said quietly. She accepted a strike across her face to protect a 19-year-old boy's job. 8 months ago, she walked back into a burning building for 3 people she barely knew. He let that settle. "What did you do tonight?" Genevieve said nothing. The room said nothing. "I want you to listen carefully," Galen said, his voice so low that the nearest guests had to hold their breath to catch it. "If you make one move, one statement, one call, one leak to anyone in this room or outside of it, you'll find that the documentation I have on your family's financial arrangements over the past 8 years is very uncomfortable reading." He tilted his head slightly. "I've always considered it insurance. I'd prefer not to use it." The color left Genevieve's face. He reached into his jacket pocket. His jacket, which was currently around Tamsin Hewitt's shoulders, and removed the engagement ring. The stone was exceptional. He set it on the bar with a sound that was very small in a very quiet room. "You have 1 hour," he said. "Use it well." She left without another word. 2 of Galen's men fell into step beside her as she reached the door, not touching her, not threatening, simply present. The room exhaled. A federal judge who had, in a previous chapter of his career, sentenced 2 of Galen's former associates, found himself quietly and somewhat embarrassed to feel relieved. Across the room, Tamsin stood near the service station. She hadn't watched the screen. She'd heard the audio with her back to it, and her hands steady on the linen she was folding, and she had not turned around. She turned around now. Galen's jacket was still around her shoulders. She stood very still for a moment, looking at the empty doorway where Genevieve had been. Then she looked at Galen. He looked back. She nodded once, the slight, precise nod of someone who has finished a calculation and found the result satisfactory, and turned back to her work. 3 weeks passed. The Meridian Club returned to its routines. The staff laughed more in the kitchens. The accounts were cleaner than they'd been in 5 years. Sedgwick reported that 3 separate vendors had called to compliment the new efficiency of the billing process. On a Tuesday morning in November, Tamsin arrived before anyone else, which was normal, and left an envelope on Sedgwick's desk, which was not. Sedgwick read it, brought it directly to Galen. Galen read the first paragraph. He put it in his desk drawer, without finishing it, and looked at Sedgwick. Find her before she leaves the building. He found her himself in the side corridor, near the service entrance, coat on, bag over her shoulder, moving with the focused quiet of someone who had made a decision at 3 in the morning and was determined to carry it out before the logic wore off. "You read it," she said. "Enough of it!" She shifted her weight. "You know why it makes sense. The dinner, the attention, the staff still talking about it. I'm a distraction. I appreciate everything, but the right thing is too. Come with me." She exhaled. "I'm trying to explain." "I know what you're trying to do." He looked at her steadily. "Come with me anyway." She followed him to his office. It looked out over the club's private garden, bare in November, but with the kind of bones that would be extraordinary in spring. He set a folder on the desk between them. She opened it, closed it, opened it again. "Chief Financial Officer," she said. "Of the legitimate holdings. 12 properties, 3 hospitality groups, 2 charitable foundations. Clean operations, reporting directly to me." He sat across from her. "Real position, real salary, real title. I manage accounts for a members club." "You've managed accounts for a members club. You've also identified fraud 3 times that my entire security team missed. You've protected junior staff from consequences they didn't deserve. You demonstrated better operational judgment in 14 months than my last 4 executive hires did in their entire tenure." A pause. "I'm not offering you this because of what happened at the dinner." "Then why?" "Because I've been trying to justify it since month 3 of your employment." A brief silence. The dinner clarified my timeline. She looked at the folder. He watched her read, carefully, the way she absorbed everything, checking each item against what she already knew. "I testified against my employer in federal court," she said. "It's on record. If anyone looks into your CFO's background, anyone who looks into my CFO's background will find a woman who told the truth when lying would have been considerably easier and better for her personally." He leaned forward slightly. "I run an organization built entirely on knowing who can be trusted. That judgment is the only real asset I have." A pause. "I trust you." Outside, rain had started against the windows. November rain, cold and patient, settling in for the long season. Somewhere below, someone started the kitchen espresso machine, and the smell moved through the old building in the way smells did in buildings with good bones, through the walls, into every room. "I'll need a week to review the foundation structures," she said finally. "Take 2. She almost smiled. "Not quite. One more thing." "Yes." Genevieve. The slander she spread to the guests. The embezzlement comments, the insinuations. "Our attorney filed the paperwork the morning after the dinner. You're named as the injured party. You don't have to do anything." She looked at him across the desk. He looked back. "Okay," she said. The charity dinner the following autumn ran with the kind of seamless precision that guests attributed to excellent management, and Tamsin would have attributed to 2 weeks of pre-planning, 4 team rehearsals, and a backup vendor for every single critical component. She stood near the kitchen entrance before the doors opened and went through what the staff had started calling her pre-event walk. Every server by name, every station confirmed, every contingency mapped. They moved differently when she'd walked the room. Looser, more confident, like athletes who'd been reminded they'd already done the training. The youngest server on the floor tonight was a woman named Priya, 22, first formal event of this scale. "I'm going to make mistakes," Priya said. "Yes," Tamsin said, "so did I. The question is what you do in the moment after." "What did you do?" Tamsin considered it honestly. "Sometimes I stepped in front of things. Sometimes I was wrong about which things to step in front of." She straightened Priya's collar. "You learn to tell the difference. It takes longer than one night." Priya laughed. The tightness in her shoulders eased. Galen watched from the mezzanine. He'd been up there for 10 minutes. The evening moved the way evenings did when the infrastructure was right, with an apparent effortlessness that was actually just very good preparation made invisible. The auction exceeded last year's numbers by 30%. 3 donors from the Pediatric Foundation cried in the specific way that meant they'd write significantly larger checks. The kitchen sent out the dessert course at the exact right moment. Near the end of the night, Priya caught the edge of a service cart near table 9. A full tray of espresso cups went over. The sound of porcelain breaking on marble was very clean and very clear in a room that had gone quiet at exactly the wrong moment. Every face turned. Priya stood in the wreckage with her hands still in the position of someone who'd tried to catch something and failed. The color was gone from her face. Tamsin was there in 5 seconds. She was already on her knees gathering pieces before Priya had fully processed what had happened. "Are you cut?" "No, Then we're fine." She kept moving methodically, clearing the debris with quick, practiced hands. "Get a damp cloth from Station 3. The espresso sets on marble if you leave it." Priya moved. She had something to do. That made it better. Around them, 3 guests quietly bent to help. Then 4. Then a small cluster of people in expensive formal wear were collecting broken porcelain at a $400 a plate charity dinner, and somehow it felt completely natural, the way things felt natural when someone had made it safe to simply be decent. Galen came down from the mezzanine. A reporter from one of the city's business publications found him near the edge of the room. The kind of journalist who covered the legitimate side of powerful men's lives and knew better than to ask about the other kind. "I've covered events here for 5 years," the reporter said. He was watching the room with the careful attention of someone who wrote about rooms for a living. Same space, same menu. But something's different. The room feels different. He shook his head, reaching for it. "I can't explain it." Galen looked out across the dining room. Tamsin was back on her feet. She was saying something quietly to Priya that made the young woman laugh, despite herself, despite the broken cups still being swept from the floor. 2 of the guests who'd helped were now talking to each other. A hospital administrator and a tech founder who'd arrived as strangers. Animated, genuinely interested, the way people got when something real had happened in a room and cracked through the performance. Tamsin caught his eye from across the space. She held his gaze for 1 second, steady, unhurried, the look of someone who was exactly where they were supposed to be. Then she turned back to her work. "What changed it?" the reporter asked. Galen answered, without looking away from her. "The day we stopped running this place on fear," he said, "and started running it on something worth protecting." The reporter wrote it down. He used it as his closing line. He'd been covering powerful men for 20 years. It was the first time he'd heard one say it and known, without being able to explain how he knew, that every word of it was true.